Welcome back to the Friar Talk podcast and YouTube channel. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about a couple trades with the Cubs specifically, but we're going to be going over Willson Contreras and Ian Happ and discussing if it makes sense for the Padres to try to make a move for one of these guys or both of these guys, and then also what that kind of compensation would look like, what the Padres would be giving up in return. And then we'll probably bounce around and maybe bring up a couple other names to the mix, just that could kind of like be played off of these. Like if one of these deals went down, does that mean we can't do this? But first question I have for you guys is, should the Padres trade for Willson Contreras and Ian Happ? And let's say it's two separate deals, or together. It doesn't really matter. But what are your guys' kind of takes on them potentially going out and making a move like that?
When you look at it from a lineup standpoint, it definitely makes a lot of sense because Willson Contreras is easily the best hitting catcher in baseball right now. You look at it, I mean, Baseball Savant page is basically all red in the hitting categories: 97 percentile average exit velocity, 98th max exit velocity, 99th and hard hit percentage. So it makes a lot of sense when you look at it from a lineup standpoint. His hard hit percentage is absurd right now; it's almost 60%, which is something I've honestly never heard of. That's kind of crazy. I'm sure someone else has done it, but I haven't looked that deep into it. Catching, he's okay at catching, I would say. He's sometimes looks pretty bad at points, but Ian Happ also makes a lot of sense considering we do need outfield. We do need some outfield help. You look at right field right now, it's Nomar Mazara and Jose Azocar. And not that they're bad players. It's just that Ian Happ is definitely an upgrade over there. Maybe he plays left field, Jurickson Profar. I don't really feel like Jurickson deserves to see the bench at all really right now, considering how good he's been playing. And I think it makes the most sense to keep him out there. So I don't know. I think Happ would have to go to the other outfield spot if that were to be the case. And I mentioned it not that long ago. I said if there were to do a trade, Contreras and Happ makes a lot of sense considering you're knocking out two positions in one trade. So that would make a lot of sense. But when you look at it from a different standpoint, it's like you're really only going to have Willson Contreras for 60 games, maybe a little more than that. That already sucks considering you are going to have to give a decent amount of prospect capital. He is basically the only good catcher on the market in the trade market. So there's going to be a lot of competition. So I think his price is going to be even higher than anticipated. Ian Happ, there is a lot of outfield options. So including Ian Happ might not cost much, but I think there definitely is a possibility the Padres look at this. Does it make much sense? I think it makes sense from a lineup standpoint. Like I said, it definitely improves your lineup immensely this year where, you're going to have Contreras, Tatis, Machado, Cronenworth, Happ all in one lineup. Luke Voigt's hitting fantastic right now. Like that's a great lineup to go into with the pitching that you have and the bullpen reinforcements that you're going to get. From a future standpoint, though, you really got to ask yourself, is it worth giving up prospect capital in order to get Willson Contreras, because you might have to give up more than anticipated. So I'm trying to think of if I'm on board or not. I want to say yeah, but definitely not confident in that.
So I don't think we need Willson Contreras. I'd much rather Ian Happ than Willson Contreras. Like as I said, we need the outfield help. We were talking about it. If Grisham goes down, the next man up is Esteury Ruiz, which isn't a bad option, but he's never played in the MLB. He hasn't played in AAA. He has really good numbers in AA, but we don't know how that's going to translate to the MLB. And Ian Happ has certified MLB experience. He walks a ton. He's in the 96th percentile and walking on Baseball Savant. Everything else is around average to above average. And he walks. I mean, we don't have a lot of guys in our lineup that walk consistently. He would be probably the highest on base percentage, maybe outside of Machado. He can play all three outfield positions. He could be a backup center fielder. He played 54 games in center last year. He's played a few this year. And then he's always just kind of been left field, center field, wherever kind of they needed him to be. He's kind of played in the outfield. He's even played in the infield a little bit. He could be an emergency infielder. But more importantly, he could be a center fielder if we need him to be. As of right now, it's either Profar goes out to center field if Grisham gets hurt, or Esteury Ruiz, who has no MLB experience. I think that is our main concern right now, is that we need an MLB bat. He'd bring a solid lefty bat in. He plays above average defense. I think he's a great fit. And like with Wilson Contreras, we're not going to be the only team on the market for him. If you look at the catcher market for trades, there is basically no one outside of Contreras that is worth trading for. And there are going to be multiple contenders that are going to want his bat, because if he's not catching, guess what? He's going to be, and he's just a hot bat right now. He's one of the hottest bats in the MLB, especially at catcher. We're not going to be the only ones that want him. There's always going to be a better trade package for the Cubs to take, even if we go after him. We're going to have to give up Campy. We saw the Cubs were obsessed with Campusano last year when we were trying to trade Eric Hosmer to him. Almost every team wants Campy. I know it's been rumored that teams across the league are down on Campusano. The kid can still hit. That is not a question. I mean, it's basically Wilson Contreras' replacement right there. We already know Contreras is not the best defensively, and the team already loves Nola behind the plate. And realistically, you'd have three catchers. You have Alfaro, you'd have Nola, and then you'd have Contreras. I already think Alfaro's more at bats, and we don't have a place to put him. So what are we going to do with two extra catchers on the bench? I mean, Alfaro can play outfield, but you have Eric Hosmer stuck at first. You already have Voit stuck at DH because he can't play first. And then you're going to have two catchers, one who already deserves more at bats but can't already get any because the catcher. I don't think Wilson Contreras is the move. I mean, it would be an upgrade bat-wise, but not defensively. Our pitching's been our strongest point. I don't think you want to disrupt the rhythm within the pitchers and the catchers. I think you got to just trade for an outfielder, trade for Ian Happ, kind of away from Contreras.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Chase. I mean, when you're looking at it, I think, okay, Padres catchers, they're not good. MLB catchers overall, looking at the other 29 teams, they're not good either. There is very few teams that are getting a lot of production out of their catcher. And the only guy where, like Wilson Contreras, like you talked about it. Yeah, he's super hot right now. He's balling out. And he's been a really solid hitter throughout his career, not the level he is right now. But he's not good defensively. And you'd be buying high on him. And you'd be buying in a market where he is pretty much the only option that would be considered an upgrade. I get that Nola has brought zero slugging to the table too. And like that's the thing, like Wilson Contreras would be like totally opposite of that. But are you going to have a Contreras Nola or a Contreras Alfaro catching duo where Contreras is getting like all of the time with these starters? Because dude, we saw it, like he's a very, very bad defensive catcher. He's been known as that. Even the series against the Padres alone, I mean, maybe not very bad. Like he's not good though. He's not a plus defender. That's what I'd say. But in the series alone against the Padres, dude, he had like 2 or 3 catcher interferences in the 3-game series. Like, and you could just see it, and like you're like, this guy is not good behind the plate. Noah, he doesn't throw guys out. Well, Alfaro doesn't throw guys out either. And a lot of people have brought this up that the Padres are one of the slowest teams like in their stretch windups. So it's a lot slower that when they start, and then guys are getting ridiculous jumps. So that also has a play. Now, you can also look at Nola and go, okay, Nola does not have a cannon on him. That is very clear as well. But Nola defensively, Nola calling games, it seems like all the pitchers love him. So I think it would disrupt that. And let's say Contreras, I talked about how hot he is right now. Let's say he goes in a little bit of a slump. And I don't think Nola's going to be that guy that brings a lot of pop to the table, but he should hit better. Like his career numbers tell you that he's going to hit better and he's going to get on base more. So say he makes that improvement, you might not be getting that big of an offensive upgrade in time for that. So that's kind of where I'm just a little bit like suspicious in a deal there. Now Happ and Contreras both have a year of arbitration after this year. So in terms of like making a move, like it kind of does make sense from like a timeline standpoint of like, oh, we're going to go get both these guys for the rest of this year and next year. And that makes them cost a little bit more that you have them next year as well. But I like Ian Happ a lot more. I think you look at this team, I'm not sold on Grisham being a good player anymore. I think that he's been getting hot. He's been playing better, but I'm just not like, oh yeah, like he's bouncing back, he's going to be fine. He had 600 plate appearances where he was a very bad offensive player. So I'm concerned there. Ian Happ being able to come over to center field, Azakar can do it too. But like, I'd rather have Happ and Azakar than Grish and Azakar, and just in terms of talent, like, so I like it. I'll also say, I think you guys were bringing it up, but Happ's not going to cost that much because there's so many outfielders. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm on these two guys. I guess my secondary question then is, so let's say I don't think Contreras is going to affect if the Padres trade for a corner outfielder. But if they traded for Happ, let's say they do that, does that mean that they can still go and try to get a different corner outfielder on the market? Because there are a lot of options, and the Padres arguably have the worst outfield in the league right now. So what do you guys think about that? You think they're going to go in and get a right fielder, whoever that is? But what are some names that you guys like? And do you think trading for Happ would kind of negate that from happening?
Yeah, I think it would. I think if you're just looking at it from a team standpoint, you really only need an outfielder. Nola, yeah, he just can't hit for power at all. But I mean, Alfaro hits for a ton of power, so they kind of, knock each other out, I guess you could say. But they're honestly doing fine. When you look at the catcher's position from like a league wide standpoint, no one's really getting much offensive production, except for the Cubs from Wilson Contreras. You look at the rest, it's like very minimal offensive production. I think more catchers are in negative WAR than any other position. But if you're looking at it from different outfielders, like, you're better off trying to get. I forgot some of the names that were brought up, but I know it was like Kyle Lewis was brought up. Kyle Lewis is kind of weird because yes, he's a great outfielder. He can hit, but he's essentially in a DH role right now because he gets hurt so often. So I don't know about that one. Austin Hayes has been brought up. Cedric Mullins has been brought up. Brian Reynolds was brought up, and the dreaded Joey Gallo has definitely been brought up a bunch. Definitely has Padre ties. AJ loves his Ranger ties. That one almost feels inevitable. And then you got, I know there was a couple more. I just kind of forgot. I can't. Oh, Ramon Laureano. That's another one that was brought up. Pinder was brought up. So there's a bunch of Benintendi. Oh, yes. Benintendi definitely has been brought up. There's a bunch of different options, man. So many options. That's what I like that because I really feel like they're not going to be that expensive no matter who it is. Maybe Reynolds will be expensive, but also I highly doubt they're going to sell him because he's just not producing at the rate that he was last year, and I don't think they want to sell low on Brian Reynolds. Though they are notorious for not paying people. So who knows what's going to happen there. I think there's just so many options that, like, Ian Happ is definitely not a top option for me. If you want catcher production at the plate, then yeah, I guess this trade makes sense. But really, when you look at it, like, you don't really need it all that much. You get Fernando back, and then you get an outfielder, and your lineup looks so freaking deep. Like, it looks so much better just adding those two bats. So I think, I honestly, this trade is not my favorite. It's definitely not my favorite. I could see it happening. If it happened, I wouldn't be too mad, but it's not one of my favorite trades. Obviously, I like the idea of Reynolds. I like the idea of Lewis. I like Hayes. I like a bunch of different outfield options rather than Happ. But I don't know. I really do think the Padres are going to make a solid move. You're going to see AJ Preller go out, swing for the fences. I think that's inevitable. He does it over every offseason. He does it he's done it every trade deadline the past couple of years. So, let's hope he swings for the fences, gets someone good. But I don't necessarily think this trade is swinging for the fences. I would say it's just you're getting a great catcher for half a year and you're trying to go all in now. But I don't think that's the move. I don't think that's the way to go.
See, I like the Ian Happ trade a lot just because if Grisham doesn't turn it around, Ian Happ would then be your center fielder because Cedric Mullins has been struggling this year, and there really isn't a lot of center field options that aren't, plagued by injury. I mean, like we said, Kyle Lewis has been reduced to DH role just because he's always in. Ian Happ is a pretty consistent player at that point. And if you do trade for Ian Happ and say Grish does turn it around, I don't think that stops the Padres from shopping for another corner outfield. I think you could get Happ and Benintendi, and then you can platoon Myers in a left field or right field DH role because realistically, Myers is going to be dealing with this knee injury for the entire season if he doesn't get surgery right now. And he is impactful when he's healthy. And when he was playing his best and when he was his most healthy, outside of the 60-game season where he played right field and he was DHing, he played first. Where do we have a problem right now? First. Realistically, we could start training Myers right now while he's hurt to be a first baseman if Hosmer doesn't pick it up, and solve kill two birds with one stone. You upgrade both offensively and defensively right field with Benintendi, and then you can bench Hosmer, or you can have three guys platooning between first, DH, and then have Myers also platoon in right field. I think that's the best solution because realistically, every time Myers plays in the outfield, he always deals with some sort of ailment. It's been his knees the last couple years. He's dealt with elbow injuries. It's just he just doesn't stay healthy in the outfield. You got to move him back to first or just give him the majority of the DH. There are a couple of different ways you can configure this lineup where Haas plays a significantly less role than he is right now because he isn't hitting good. I mean, we talked about it last episode. So I think there's a couple different ways you can go about it, but I don't think trading for Happ stops the Padres at all from getting another outfielder.
Yeah, so Chase, I'm probably gonna echo you on that too, because I do think like they could potentially still go get another corner outfielder. However, I do think it'll be a little bit different. Or I guess I came into it, I was thinking it'd be a little bit different because my thought was, okay, you'd probably want to move Myers in that case. And if you did bring in Happ and Benintendi or something like that, you'd have to free up some money because I don't think they're trying to go over the luxury tax. I really don't, because if you keep doing it season after season, you're like, it gets taxed heavier and heavier. I think this is a year where they're not going over it. And I think next year, hopefully, is a year where they are going over it and they kind of make a big swing in the offseason, bring back Musgrove, stuff like that. But I don't think they're trying to go over it this year. So my thought was you'd probably need to trade Myers as well to basically make room for that deal. But you bring up him being at first. You can try to trade Hosmer again. I mean, this is the same conversation, right, that we always have. Try to trade Hosmer or Myers so you can free up some money and go get some guys. Like it is consistent like that. But I do think it definitely becomes less likely if you go trade for someone because they're right up against the luxury tax, right? So let's say they do go and get Happ. And also, I did bring this up right before. Contreras is a free agent after this year. I'm sorry. I said that he had another year. Only Happ has another year. But this year, Happ makes $6.8 million. Next year, he's in arbitration. So you could potentially have him back. So I do think it makes sense. But Isaac, I mean, you brought it up as well. Like, if it is like you can only bring one of these guys, and then you try to like free up some money by moving Lamet. I don't know who would want him, but like moving some guys that make a decent amount. If you only go get Happ, it's probably only going to be him if you can't move one of those other guys. So it easily could end up working out like that. It's just tough to see because there's going to need to be corresponding moves if they are indeed not trying to go over into the luxury tax. But it easily could be where like Happ is like, it's Happ and that's it. And that's the guy you're getting. Or maybe like they swap guys that have like similar deals or something like that. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. There are, like you said, Isaac, a ton of outfield options right now. So it's going to really depend on one of the big guys is it's going to depend on how Grisham looks, because you're going to become more and more likely to try to go get a guy that can play somewhat center field, somewhat corner outfield if Grisham continues to struggle, if he doesn't have a bounce back that he's kind of showing he's having signs of, but he's been bad. So like if he's not like a lot better in a couple months, they might be like, okay, we have to get someone that can also slide in the center because we don't have faith in this guy. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I think that's kind of the breakdown for these guys and what would happen if you did go make a move for one of them. But I think it's going to do it for today's episode. So thank you guys all for listening. Tomorrow, which will be Thursday, we'll be going live sometime in the afternoon, evening, or sometime. We'll put that out in the morning, but not going to go live after the late start against the Mets because that is brutal on the East Coast. So I'm gonna wait up on that. But thank you guys for listening, and we'll talk to you all very, very soon.